So we started on this whole idea of giving. That's where kind of the little video is. We're just starting there, of giving of oneself in what way, whatever way we give from ourselves. There's lots of ways to give. We give in our time, we give in our commitment, we give in our effort, we give in our emotions, we give in our material blessings, we give in our talent to God in some way. And if we don't, the river is a great example. If you've ever gone down to the Walnut River or whatever, great thing about that river is that I know I've been down there when the temperatures were way sub-freezing. In the middle of the river will still be flowing and it won't be frozen. Everything to the side where the water still froze. And that's kind of why giving is so important. Giving of oneself as a mentality, as a heart, because that keeps you from freezing. And once we become frozen, it's very hard for God to be using us at all. And it's very hard for us to hear what God has to tell us. So now it's very important, and moving into a very direct thing of giving. In this particular area of giving, and like I say, there's lots of levels, but this particular area is maybe the biggest barometer of where a person really is. It's a way that actually kind of quantifies where we are. So what is this special area of giving? Well, I'm going to start by not telling you. Instead, I'm going to give you a challenge. I'm going to share with you basically 4 snapshots from the Old Testament. And we're going to talk about the formation of the Jewish kingdom of Israel. And your job in through this is going to be to connect the snapshots or connect the dots in what this is all telling us. So here's snapshot number 1 for you. Egypt, 1503 BC. We're in Exodus, and we're back in living in chapter 3 for the moment. Now, verse 19, and this is God talking to Moses at the time. But I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go. Well, that's inspiring, isn't it? No, not even by a mighty hand. Pharaoh's not letting anyone go. So this is God, I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders, which I will do in its midst. And after that, he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, speaking of the Hebrews. And it shall be, when you go, you shall not go empty-handed. Interesting thing what God does is that when he's working, a lot of times he'll give you a very practical sign. And this is kind of a sign in a way of that his hand is in all of this. But every woman shall ask of her neighbor, namely of her who dwells near her house, articles of silver, articles of gold, and clothing, and you shall put them on your sons and on your daughters. So you shall plunder the Egyptians. Now, let's just think of where we're talking here with this nation. Egypt, at this point, is the most powerful nation on the face of the planet. Nobody messes with Egypt. They are the big dog. And Israel is the lowest of the low. They're a nation within a nation. And one of the reasons that Egypt can be so powerful is that they've got this free labor force called slaves, also known as Hebrews. So they're kind of a goose and golden egg thing. They're not about to let them go. And there's a few certainties we know that no matter who we're talking about. One is, no one forces the stronger person against their will. If you were going to force somebody to do something, you better be the stronger person, because you can't force a stronger against their will. And we know this, is that the Hebrews were not those people. They were powerless. They were slaves. The fact that they would get to plunder the Egyptians was absurd. It was it's just absurd. And another thing we know is that nobody causes the more powerful to do what they don't want to do, or to take from them what they don't want to give. But yet that's what we are told is going to happen. Imagine this. Imagine there we've got, I see Ethan back there. We have Ethan runs his Dave Ramsey program again, which we need to do again, Ethan, sometime soon. But Ethan makes his promise. He says, well, if you go through this program, this time next year you'll be debt free. Well, you might believe that part. And you'll be billionaires. Well, I say, I'm taking the course. But the bottom line is chances are I'm not going to be a billionaire. And in fact, everybody in this room will be billionaires. Not very likely. But the chances of that happening are more than the Israeli people being free and leaving with all the wealth of Egypt in their pockets. It's just not going to happen unless there is something stronger than the earth itself that plays a hand in it. God has this way of making impossible things. See, they did leave, right? So there could only be one explanation for all this. And that takes us to snapshot number 2. Egypt, basically the next year, 1502 BC. And by now we're in chapter 12 of Exodus. So Pharaoh rose in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. Great Passover takes place. Then the Pharaoh calls Moses and Aaron by night, right at that time, and says, "Rise up, go out from among my people, both you and the children of Israel, and go and serve the Lord as you have said, and take your flocks and your herds with you, and be gone, and bless me also." And the Egyptians urged the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, "We shall all be dead." So the people took their dough before it was leavened, having their kneading bowls bound up in their clothes on their shoulders. Now the children of Israel had done according to the word of Moses, and they asked the Egyptians for articles of silver, articles of gold, and clothing. And the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they granted them what they requested. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. So there it is. Imagine, that's kind of something to think of. Imagine if somebody comes knocking on your door in the middle of the night and says, "We're leaving now. Give us all the gold stuff you have in your house and all the silver stuff, and we'll be on our way." And you're like, "Oh yeah, just get out of here. Here, take it." It's just something that sounds completely absurd. But that's what happened. As a matter of fact, to put it in theological terms, to explain this, I would use the word, ta-da! It happened. There's not even a smirk over there, so I guess that didn't work so well. You just never know. But the point is that is exactly what had happened. And just to drive the point home a little bit more, is consider what slaves were in ancient times. They were property. They didn't own property. That's, to them in their mind, it's like saying, okay, your pot owns your kettle. They're both property and they're both yours. And yet, these Hebrew people got to leave owning all this material wealth. On top of that, it meant that the Egyptians ate crow besides losing stuff, because basically it was a compensation package for saying, we treated you wrong all these years and we shouldn't have done that, and so here's this compensation and off you go. And so the whole thing is just this big impossible picture. Question is, in the bigger picture of this, to ask ourselves, why did God provide them with all this material wealth? Why did He allow them to get all this stuff before they left? I might even throw that out as somebody cares to hazard a guess. If you give a good enough answer, you get a free cup of raised coffee. That incentive used to work all the time. I guess now it just makes people think. There's a lot of reasons. We could say, well, God made sure they had enough wealth so that when they did leave, they wouldn't starve to death out there. But that doesn't quite answer it, because He provided food anyway in the form of manna. Maybe they would use it to pay guides to show them around in the desert. Well, that doesn't really answer it, because God did that Himself too. But He left them, or He had them leave with all this wealth. Why? What was His reason? We know it came from Him. He gave it to them, but why? Snapshot number 3. By this time, we're in the Sinai Desert. It's 1461 BC, and we're now living in Exodus 25, starting at the beginning of that chapter. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel that they bring me an offering. That they bring me an offering. From everyone who gives it willingly with his heart, you shall take my offering." Wow, that kind of sounds more like New Testament than Old Testament, doesn't it? It's a free will offering. And this is the offering which you shall take from them, gold, silver, and bronze. Oh, quick pop quiz. What was it they got from the Egyptians? But gold? Yes. Silver? Yeah. Bronze. Well, we didn't mention it, but that's probably pretty good. Purple, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, fine linen and goat's hair, clothes that they were given, ram skins, dyed red, badger skins, and acacia wood, oil for the light, and spices for the anointing oil and for the sweet incense, onyx stones and stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell with them. So God gave them all this impossible will, and they went out. And then he says, now I'm going to have you build this tabernacle. And oh, guess what we're going to use to build it with? Remember all that stuff you took from Egypt? But the thing is, he doesn't say, give me this stuff back. He says, to those who will give with a free heart, with a willing heart. God gives, they receive. Now think of this tabernacle, what it must have looked like. All these beautiful things, exotic wood. Even the poles didn't touch the earth. They were set on sterling silver pedestals. And then all this gold leafing that was master craftsmen put over all kinds of things. The fine regal linen that was in the Holy of Holies and such in there. It must have been a beautiful, beautiful place. Question is, if they wouldn't have given what they had got, would the temple ever been built? I don't think so, because of all the things God gives, the temple wasn't one of them. The temple was made by the materials given to the people. There was the people given in the mix. So their wealth built this tabernacle. Oh, okay, so that's the bigger picture. Well, not quite. We're still not there. We're still not there. That's a piece of it, but then we have to go to snapshot number 4 in all of this. Still in the Sinai desert, short time later, all of these wonderful materials were gathered together, and then these people who were gifted in crafting, in skills and labor and stuff, and the construction starts, and all this stuff is put together, and finally, this tabernacle is raised. It's put together, this giant, beautiful tent, really. And we're now in Exodus 40, in verse 33. Find, here it is being set up. And he, that's Moses, raised up the court all around the tabernacle and the altar, and hung the screen of the court gate. So Moses finished the work. Then the cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter the tabernacle of meeting because the cloud rested above it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. God was so tangible that they couldn't even go inside. What an amazing thing that must have happened. But did you connect the dots that we're talking about here? It started with this impossible wealth. It started with what God gave the people. And that's why it was impossible to know where it came from. God gave the wealth. And then it ends with the people experiencing the glory of God. And there in the middle dots, we have the people deciding what they're going to do with the wealth. And when they give the wealth, this is it. See, the tabernacle was just an opportunity to experience God. And the people were in the mix. That hasn't changed, because this was not the Mosaic law. This free giving was the same thing we live under today. They were doing the same thing. What we're getting at is that means the law, or the principle law, the principle behind it, the spiritual law, if I may say, hasn't changed. In order for us to experience God, there is still this sense that we must give to God, and we must do it willingly. If we don't, it's not God. God owns everything. It's not hurting God. It is hurting ourselves in what we do. When you look at the tabernacle, you know what it really was? It was a prototype of the church. Wow, I thought that was Old Testament stuff and all that. Oh yeah, but it's the exact model, thousands of years before Christ ever walked on the earth. The model for what this was supposed to be. And if you look at it, you can see all the parallels. First, it was sponsored by willing hearts. If you weren't willing, don't bother. And willing what? It was a giving. The material wealth led to the physical blessing. Don't kid yourself. The two are connected. So these willing hearts set this up. Then it was maintained by people that God put in front. They weren't so much the bosses. They were simply the managers for the boss. Moses, Aaron, the Levitical priests. Well, now we have our elders and pastors and such. So there's still a parallel there. If we were to go back and read through the whole thing of how the tabernacle was made, it was made by skilled craftsmen who were known that they got their gifts, their talents, their abilities to do that from God. That's still the same today. You know where the skilled craftsmen really are right now? They're not in this room. They're back in the other rooms. They're crafting the seed of God into the souls of our children. There's other people in here with God-given skills. Their craft is making you feel welcome when you walk through a door. There are others who do it in teaching, and preaching, and all these different areas. If we look at how the new church, how the church is set up that way, it's a parallel to what was going on with the tabernacle. The whole idea of the tabernacle was it was a place for the people to assemble. It's kind of an interesting thing. I saw a sketch of, kind of a rendition of what it would have looked like as they camped around this thing. And all the tribes of Israel, of course, camped all around, and there was the tabernacle set up in the center. It was the focal point for them to assemble. It's the same in the church. If you think of it, the church is, oh yes, the church is its people, of course it is. But it's not simply its people, it's the assembling of the people. Well, you have a physical body, I have a physical body. That means we need a place to physically assemble, a place to physically come together. So we need some kind of a physical structure. Well, a physical structure needs to be constructed and maintained. So you have that going on. You have, if we're doing it on a routine basis, which we are called to do, then we need some type of organization. So we need people that are still skilled in trying to just keep the whole system of order running. We still need the people with all these different gifts. Everyone with gifts is accountable for how they're maintaining not just the building, but the people who are really the church inside. Still got all these things going on. It follows the design. It's the same reason. This isn't all the church, but this is an opportunity to experience the glory of God. It's an opportunity to approach God. It's an opportunity to come together. It's still the same thing. So the whole spiritual principle of the tabernacle is still the same. It still comes from, let's not kid ourselves, that there is tangible giving that leads to a tangible experience. Now, in here, we don't want to get off on an unbalanced way of thinking. That, okay, you give to God materially, and then it's like, it's kind of this for that, you give, and then, next week God gives you a Cadillac because you gave something in the collection plate. That's a perversion of Scripture. But we don't have to guess. If we were to step back and say, well, what would have happened if the people never materially supported the tabernacle? Nobody gave. Nobody gave the gold and the silver, the fine linen and all. What would have happened? Well, because in effect it does happen. There reaches a time in Israel after they built this tabernacle and later the temples when people did stop the material steps. And this is what we're told. The nation fell apart. Malachi 3:8. He starts with what must have been an absurd statement to the Jewish people at the time. He says, will a man rob God? Well, the answer would be, are you kidding? Who's going to mess with God? Yet you robbed me. But you say, in what way have we robbed you, God? And he says, in tithes and offerings, you are cursed with a curse, for you have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and prove me now in this, says the Lord of hosts. If I will not open the windows of heaven and pour out such a blessing that there will not be room enough to receive it. Now, here's the thing in the balance, is that this is that thing we talked about, the prosperity gospel. You give to God and you don't have a physical thing to worry about. Well, in balanced scriptures, we look back, the great first model was the tabernacle. And when the people gave materially, where they were really supported, of course they were given manna, they were taken care of physically. But the real blessing wasn't physical, it was spiritual. That's a profound thing, just to soak that one thought in. Material giving is tied directly to spiritual blessing, if we're doing it right. Now the truth is, you don't hear much of that kind of thing, and maybe because we get this bad rap from the televangelist side. If you go to a church or some religious place, they're only after your money. Well, the thing is, quite contrary to that, the least talked about topic in churches today is anything to do with material giving. Because it's not very popular. Pastor's scared stiff. Man, if I say anything about giving materially, people are going to get all turned off and they'll never come back. Well, you know what? Can I confess this to you, is that I hate money. When I say that, I like spending it. I like getting stuff, but I don't like money. I don't like counting it. I don't like keeping track of it. I don't like, I'm not a business person where I like this, I made so much, and I appreciate people who are that way, but I'm not. So I've stayed away from that topic myself. What made me latch into this with both hands is this. If we're talking discipleship, and this is left out, I have left you, I have left the people in my sphere of teaching ignorant on something that will cost you spiritually. Is that discipleship will be limited on this material side. And you know what? I don't care. You go some other church next week, and that's the thing. I'm just telling you, wherever you go, that if you don't give to God what is due God, materially, you will pay a price for it. It will limit your discipleship.